So, it's crazy to me, right? Because everything that's basically, basically, uh, degenerate or uh, mm, disruptive is the label black culture, right? So, murder, drugs, sex, uh, the most ratchet shit, you know, degeneracy, right? Deviant behavior, or whatever you want to call it, right? Has been labeled black culture. Um, Now black people are racist. So there's a lot of reverse racism because black people have become the racist of American society. Okay, so let's get into culture. What is culture, right? So is pedophilia a culture thing? Um, child porn, child sex. Is that a culture thing? Um, uh, Circumcisions, moils, putting their mouth on baby penis. Is that a culture thing? Um, you know what I mean? There's a it's, there's a school shootings. Is that a culture thing? Um, you know what I mean? There's a um, kidnapping and rape and torture and just is that a culture thing? There's a lot of things that can be considered culture things, cultural, right? Lying and cheating and you know adulterer, being an adulteress. You know what I mean? Um, Hateful, just going out of your way to be in people's business and then or culture appropriation or is that a culture thing? It's a lot of bullshit that people do that can be considered culture things, right? So that's a lot that could be considered, that's cultural, right? Because a guy shoots up a school and nobody seems to be upset with him. We seem to be going out of our way to find an excuse for why he did what he did. Why would he shoot up a school? Why would he get his mom's gun and shoot innocent people? Why would he do that? Right? He has to be having some kind of mental break. He was a loner, so maybe that's why he he was lonely or whatever the fuck excuse we're gonna make for a guy taking a gun to a school and shooting people. Mass shootings, is that a cultural thing? Mm. Making excuses for it seems to be, right? Um, a guy blasts his whole family away. Is that a culture thing? Or, you know what I mean? Because people seem to, it's funny to me when people do shit like that, we don't ever blame the person, we blame the weapon. Right? The gun just got up and drove itself to a school and started blasting people. Like a gun just got up, drove itself to a club and started blasting people. Like a gun just got up, drove itself to a supermarket and started blasting people. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things that can be considered cultural norms, depend on whose face is attached to it. And that's why the media does a great job in attaching black faces to everything that the average person would consider to be vile, disgusting, disturbing, deviant, ratchet. Um, you know, you feel me? That's why people are more upset with Diddy than Epstein. That's why you're gonna know Diddy's whole list, right? Everybody that mingles with Diddy, was at a Diddy party, who had encounters with Diddy. You're gonna know that whole list, right? Epstein, that list is shh, 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 hush, top secret. We can't disclose those names. You know, shh, bury that. He hung himself, right? You know, I guess that's cultural, or is that a money thing, right? Is is that cultural, or is that a money thing? I would assume that's millionaire, billionaire, pedophile, playboy, all kind of shit mixed in that, right? Because look at Hugh Hefner, right? People love Hugh. What's the little girl? I think she was like 9 or 11, and they had her in Playboy and shit, and people, you know what I mean? Um, the little girl that used to play in all the movies and was always, you know what I mean? You know, Hollywood. Is that cultural? You know what I mean? Nickelodeon. Is that cultural? You know what I mean? I don't know. But I do know that there's been a shift. You know, like I said, a complete 180. Now, black people are the racists in America now, right? Um, and whites are the victim of that racism. Is from what I see and from what I hear, right? Now, when you look at stuff that's on the news, on the net, social media, you know what I mean? There are certain groups you can't talk about, right? Um, Me as a black person, I see there's a lot of negative commentary towards my community, right? And in some ways, depending on what it is, there's a lot of negative commentary towards whites, you know, in some capacity, right? Hispanics in some capacity, right? Jews, you can't talk about. Even if you tell the truth, it comes off as anti-Semitism, right? So my thing is, you know, we had Asian hate for a while, right? You know, then that came and went. They got a bill, they got money, right? There's never been an anti-black agenda or anti-black bill or anything like that, even though black people have been discriminated against for years and years and years and years and years, right? Um, just recently, right? I think, two recent graduates, 19 years old. They missed their flight. They were found dead in the mountains, shot dead in the mountains, right? And it was labeled a murder suicide, right? And now, if you get into that story, you would see that what they were, and the story or the narrative that's being spent is utterly ridiculous. But it happens. I mean, they found a black woman hung, and they said that was a suicide. They found a black man hung in the park. They said that was a suicide, even though he was so tall, his feet was touching the ground, right? So unless he was kneeling or holding his legs up or however that happened, that him hanging himself was really crazy, right? But there's been many of these events, and they've been labeled suicides, right? So unless the media can add a racial component in the way they want to add the racial component, they're going to label any black death that's suspicious as a suicide, right? Now, that's crazy to me, because in situations that are altercations that I don't think were about race, or race didn't come up during the altercation, once it hits the media, it turns into a race thing, right? So my thing is this. Okay, so black people are the new racists. Um, the Jewish community is under attack. I guess that would be, if that considered, I guess that's what, are those hate crimes too? Anti-Semitism, right? And so Jews have recently been labeled a minority group, so they're not white. So It's not a religion anymore. It's a nationality, I guess, or ethnicity. I don't know. I, man, I don't know. Shit, crazy. Because I guess it depends on what the situation is, right? Now, certain things you can say, certain things you can't say. And in this country, there's a lot of things you can't say because there's so much hate towards the Jewish community that there's been laws passed in probably 49 out of the 50 states, right? Um, you you can't criticize, you can't boycott, you can't even tell the truth, right? I seen some guy on TV the other day talking about how everybody is hateful or everything that's said towards or about the Jewish community is but basically everybody's anti-Semitic and they deserve to be locked up for it. All right? And I'm like, that's crazy. Because I have seen throughout my history books and throughout history, I never learned anything about Jews besides the Holocaust, right? Which depend on how much research you do into that, you know, you know what I mean. But I heard a lot about chattel slavery, right? We don't really talk about the Irish and their indentured servitude or the Italians or anything like that because nothing like that, right? We only hear about blacks being slaves, right? And then you go through Jim Crow, um, and segregation, um, just all it's a lot, right? Redlining, all kind of shit, right? But there has never been any anti anti black laws, you know what I mean, or bills or anything like that. Even though black people were being burnt, hung from trees, uh, judged unfairly, right? And then I seen something the other day that went, I guess Aaron Magruder, whatever his name was like, oh, black people don't use up all of their moral, what he said, some shit, right? Now, I look at it this way, right? As a black man, right? I say this shit all the time. You feel me? I don't care if people don't like me. I don't go out of my way to be liked. This is a big world out here. You feel me? And life is short. I'm going to do what works for me and what's best for me. I don't go out my way searching people out or no shit like that or trying to be included in shit that people don't want to include me in. Hey, so if a group of people don't fuck with me, that's cool, right? Now the thing about this, what's going on, because you got the borders are wide open and a bunch of people coming in and out of the country, and there's a lot of broke, poor, homeless Americans, right? And while everybody is focused on what race and this and that, Americans are broke, unemployed, hungry than a motherfucker, and our education system is broken depending on what schools you go to, right? The schools in your area. Most public schools, the public education system is trash. We know this. It is what it is. But nobody cares, right? And my whole thing about all of this shit too is that when it comes to representation, when it comes to our politics and our supposed to be leaders and shit like that, right? Speaking from my point of view when it comes to black people, right? Only time you see a black politician stand up and say some shit is when he's talking about a group of people that's not black. That's when he's thrust into the forefront. That's when he's there, talking about, you know, how great this country is, and this country is a country of immigrants, and you know, deporting people and separating families and all of this shit is, you know what I mean? But during the, I guess say, I can't say that because during the BLM riots, because that whole movement was co-opted and infiltrated. The Antifa movement got into that. George Soros got into that. You know, it pretty much went the way that they wanted it to go. You know, we're gonna be brick pallets around and encourage you to burn down the city, take to the streets with your anger. But when you look at those crowds, you know what I mean? The majority of those crowds weren't black during the Black Lives Matter rallies. You know what I mean? Because if you was really paying attention, you realize that what his name was, Darren Seals, I think. You know, the people that the real grassroots movement of it all had been co-opted and turned into some whole other shit. Right? Same thing with everything. Same thing that happened with everything that we do. Right? That's why you can't involve people into a movement. You know what I mean? People be want to help, but hey, sometimes your helping is staying out of the way. You know what I mean? you can't join. You know what I mean? You just help from afar. It's best for everybody. uh, but hey, I'm all over the place with it this morning. But what I really wanted to say is that we, our media and our, I guess, heads of media, heads of news, and heads of social media, right? So we know that all of this is algorithms and, sensationalized stories, right? We know that all of this is not put out by accident. We know that there's a puppet master, right? So we know that all of this is by design. So right now, where everything is being racial, everything is race, 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 right? We know why. And the crazy part about it, why everything is about race, there's a group of people that's in position, putting themselves in position to be untouchable, right? Untouchable, beyond reproach. Can't say anything about it. Can't do anything, right? And while we having race debates about nothing, these people are putting themselves in a position of even more power. But it's all good because, we're having great debates on race and racism, and segregation, right? And why we shouldn't live around each other, which we barely do anyway, unless we poor, right? Everybody has their own neighborhoods. There's black neighborhoods. They're considered black neighborhoods, but there are no black businesses in those neighborhoods. White neighborhoods, Hispanic neighborhoods, which are Hispanic because everything, even the signs, everything is in Spanish. You walk in, the staff is Spanish. Nobody speaks English, and they look at you like, "Why are you even here?" You feel me? Every major hub, got a little Haiti, a little Italy, Chinatown, shit like that. I think I spoke on this before, but I'm just saying. So it is what it is, but you know what I mean. You can't have. We have a select group, so it's, or I guess selective outrage or shit that we get mad about, and we all do it. That goes across race. Um, that's transcends race, right? Certain things everybody takes to the streets about. You feel me? Like the little, to me, the George Floyd thing. I mean, there was just other things that happened before that that people could have took to the streets about. The fact that the Democrats made that a story and took to the streets about that was crazy, right? We had kids being shot and killed by the police. Nobody said anything. People always say, "Oh, what about black on black crime?" You feel me? You're not in those neighborhoods. You don't know what we doing. It's like me. I'm not in a predominant white neighborhood. I don't know what they do in them. I don't know what they do when some white guys stalking the streets at night. You feel me? And snatching women in the bushes and doing things to them. You feel me? Or, they're adopting kids and inviting all their friends over to have freak offs. That's what you want to call what these pedophiles are doing when they adopt these kids. Some real some real sick shit going on. It's a lot of trafficking of children, coming across in and out of this country from the border countries, from the coast, from the ports. You feel me? A lot of trafficking going on, and we're having race debates. There's a lot of pedophilia going on, and we're having race debates. There's a lot of shit going on in this country, and we're having race debates. When it's not even really about race, everything is color coded, right? Everything. The lighter you are, the more favorable your treatment. The darker you are, it's reverse, right? And it doesn't matter if you're Hispanic, Indian, um, whatever, right? And don't be a Muslim. That's a whole nother bag right there because you've been labeled throughout the world as terrorists, right? So it is what it is. I mean, it's the world. uh, it's the world, right? It's what the greatest weapon known to man has done to people. Television, media. That's why it's called media. You feel me? It's a lot of crazy shit, man. Um, damn. Uh, I didn't even really get into what I was gonna get into, but I guess this is suffice for now. But yeah, man, everything is not about race. I mean, and with everything that's going on, race is the last thing people should be worried about. We got a lot of shit coming up. There's a lot of shit happening. When everybody was trapped in their house with COVID, you feel me? And they tried to make that a race thing because we can't get it because and then it turned into you're dying of the regular numbers, you're dying more than anybody. You know what I mean? It is what it is. They hit us with a whole bio weapon, basically. You feel me? It didn't force you to take the jab. And we having race debates every time you turn around. Right? It's like so much shit going on in this country. It's basically collapsing in front of your eyes. And we're having race debates. Illegals get treated better than citizens. Is our country racist towards Americans? We're more mad at Trump tariffs on China than we are with the fact that we sent all of our jobs to China and we basically built China's economy. And we're mad about the goods that was coming here cheaply made anyway. I remember there was a whole thing about what it was construction material coming from China that was falling all apart and shit. You feel me? They was selling us bullshit. They selling bullshit now. uh, I mean, god damn, we be worried about the wrong shit in this country. Oh, the wrong shit, man. We've been so dumbed down as a nation. Oh man, we be worried about the wrong shit, right? But what I do know, when it comes from the left, that's what they call it now, liberals, whatever. They're gonna take full advantage of Trump being president and make everything about race. The media is complicit in it because the media, it's not, it's complicit in it, right? And then I'm trying to find a way how I'm gonna word it, but you know, it's biased media, biased coverage. Um, the heads of that, I guess they put that together that way, right? This whole shit is like a show, like a movie, like the Truman Show, right? We're all being controlled, and he who controls your emotions controls you, and he who controls images controls the minds, right? So when you want to know why our country is going in the direction it's going in, just look at who's in control of it. Look who's in control of the imagery. Look who's in control of pulling and tugging on your heartstrings and making everything an issue of race and culture, basically, right? Shit crazy. But it is what it is. Yeah, I mean, I'm just one person. Um, I notice a lot of shit. I see a lot of things. And I notice people with power and money live in segregated communities. They only live around people with power and money. Right? Like I told you, they don't live around the help. They don't live around the labor. They don't live around those struggling or going check to check. You may be able to come in their communities and work for them, but that's it. You feel me? And there are millions of dollars, maybe even billions in these communities, right? These communities are always ducked off somewhere, right? Where you don't even know about them or you probably never even heard about them. You know what I mean? Because you can't afford to live there. Now you may know somebody who works there who can tell you all about it, but that's as far as you go. And they don't have the same problems that we have because they have the money, they have the resources, they have the connections. You know, they're not in their communities arguing about black and white. They don't waste their time with that. So maybe you shouldn't waste your time with that either. Maybe you should find something more productive, something that actually matters, something that will actually move you in the direction you're trying to get to. Because walking around angry about what you see on the tube, it's not going to help you at all. I mean, it'll get you some views on the tube, you know, YouTube and Instagram and Twitter and some Twitter likes and shit like that, you know, TikTok, shit like that. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I guess it's a place for the race hustle. It's a lot of money in it. So, that shit ain't going nowhere. There's a lot of money in that shit, for real. So, yeah. It is what it is. What are you gonna do?